All right, welcome to the SEC preview. Biscuits and SEC in the house, the hammer, Boss Man Slim, here to talk all about the week that will be in SEC football. But you know what, guys? I think, first of all, we need to go backwards and discuss what exactly happened in that Florida-Alabama game. It's almost like a whole mythos was destroyed.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. I think everybody after the first few weeks saw Alabama again, and we're like, oh man, they're just going to run through it, run through the schedule, just give them a playoff spot now. It's no problem. And then we see what happened against Florida. They get out to a big lead, and then Florida hangs in there and ends up coming back, right, and making it a game. Alabama looked really mortal for the first time in a long time, and it was really fun to watch that. I was actually coming back from Colorado, watching it in my car on my phone, which probably was unsafe. But anyway, can't get enough of college football. So I was watching it, and it was interesting to see. I think Alabama is vulnerable this year, right? I think this is kind of a chaos year. It could be. And then with Florida, hey, I told you in the preseason, everybody's sleeping on Florida. Everybody thinks they lost all these guys, Pitts and Tony, and Trask. Well, look, Florida's here. They can play with anybody. They just played with Alabama. Watch out. Georgia looked really good this weekend, but they're beatable. I think Florida can do it. So I can't wait for that game. And anyway, Alabama's vulnerable, and Florida can play with anybody, and it's going to be exciting to watch the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we just talked about. I mean, the fact that Bama looks mortal was encouraging for any fan base in the SEC that's not Alabama. But the more surprising thing to me was how it happened, because if you look at it, Bama's a younger team going on the road. This is their first big road test. Although I didn't think it was going to be very close. I had Alabama covering the spread. You could see a situation where maybe they get into some trouble and this ends up being a close game. But again, the way it happened was the most shocking thing. I mean, Florida outgained Alabama. The Alabama offense totally stalled for the most part after they got out to that 21-point lead. But they didn't turn the ball over. They weren't sloppy. They were just getting stopped. Florida was just able to stop them. And then on the other side, Florida, who, I mean, can't really throw the ball, didn't really throw the ball that well in the game, was just able to run it down their throats. And that's not something we've seen happen to Alabama I don't remember the last time Alabama got whipped in the trenches was. So, when you think of a team going toe-to-toe with Alabama, especially lately, you think of what Florida did last year or what Ole Miss did, and you're scoring 40-plus points and you're keeping up with Alabama. Well, this was not that. This was Florida lining up and running the ball and saying, we are physically beating you and we're going to run it until you stop us. And Bama couldn't stop them. The clock is what stopped it, because if that game somehow got into overtime, Florida was going to win that game. So that was the most surprising thing to me, is just, again, how it happened. And like I said, if you are an SEC fan that doesn't root for the Crimson Tide, then you've got to be pretty happy knowing, okay, obviously they're going to get better, but there are ways to beat them now that doesn't consist of scoring 45 or 50 points.
Yeah, for years you thought of, back in 2010 on, you needed elite quarterback play just to compete with these guys. Florida did this with almost no quarterback play, just basically running the Wildcat the whole game. And that just blows me up. And that's the reason I say the mythos has been destroyed. And honestly, they got Southern Miss this weekend. Alabama's got a buzzsaw coming into town October 2nd.
Can't wait to watch that one. It's going to be fun. The Lane train is rolling. And like we just talked about, Alabama looks vulnerable. And last year, right, we saw that Lane can hang with these guys. He knows how to call plays. He knows Saban's mind in and out. So everybody was circling that game before the season started, and now the hype is just going to be through the roof when they meet next week. I can't wait.
Yeah, I imagine game day will be there as well. Let's move on to this week, the game of the week, Texas A&M and Arkansas. It's weird to say that, but Arkansas has become a legit team this year. I thought A&M was going to be good. They're about what you expected them to be. But now there's a legit chance for Arkansas to come in there into AT&T and make a little noise in Jerry World.
Yeah, absolutely. To touch on last week just here briefly, we talked about Arkansas maybe being in kind of a sandwich between a letdown look-ahead game, and that was not the case at all. They took care of business last week against Georgia State. KJ Jefferson had the best game he's had all year. So they're coming into this ready to roll. I think they have a couple injuries on their offensive line from what I saw in Sam Pittman's press conference. He didn't say they weren't going to play, so it's kind of day-to-day. We'll see. Given the strength of A&M's team is their defense, and a lot of that comes from their defensive front, that would be a couple big losses for Arkansas because they're going to want to run the ball. I mean, it was good to see KJ Jefferson throw the ball well, but Georgia State's not A&M, so I'm still not convinced he can throw the ball that well against a great defense. So Arkansas is going to want to run the ball. They're going to need to run the ball. So those injuries could be big, and hopefully that's not the case. Obviously, you don't want a big game like this to come down to a couple guys missing on the line, but it's absolutely going to be a game. A&M, the way they play, especially with Calzada in there, they looked fine against New Mexico, but it wasn't anything unbelievable. So right now they are not built to blow teams out. So even if you look at the roster and say A&M has more talent or this or that, just the way they play, it's going to be a close game. So really, I think this is just going to be an old school SEC football game where both teams are going to try to establish the run. Both defenses are going to try to stop the run. And it's going to just be a matter of who can win the battle up front and who can get a little bit of push or who can get penetration on defense and stop it. So I cannot wait. I think it's going to be a really fun game. It's going to be close, and it's going to be a hard-hitting, just sort of throwback SEC game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with almost all that. I mean, Arkansas is getting up for this game. They've had this one circled. They are so sick of losing to Texas A&M. They took care of Texas earlier this year. Now they took care of Rice, and they want to go for the Southwest Conference sweep. I think this one, like Hank said, these two defenses are kind of what it comes down to and how they play. They're going to load the box on both these quarterbacks. Texas A&M is looking at KJ Jefferson, and they don't think that he can really throw the ball. Arkansas is looking at Zach Calzada and saying, hey, we don't have a ton on this kid yet. We don't think he can throw the ball as well. So let's load the box and let's neutralize Isaiah Spiller. And then, for Texas A&M, they've got the number one pass defense in the country right now. So they're going to load the box and dare KJ Jefferson to try to throw the ball and try to neutralize that run game. So I think this is going to be – I think Arkansas is going to be up for this game. They're going to be excited for this game. There's going to be emotion behind it. Texas A&M is going to have to try and neutralize that quickly. I think in the end, A&M wins out because I just think their defense is better, and I think they can force KJ Jefferson into mistakes. I do expect it to be close. I think that the A&M defense is the difference, and Calzada makes one or two more plays that are enough to win A&M the ball game.
Yeah, this is a 20-17 type game in my opinion. But also to remember, Kendall Briles was the coach of De'Aaron King in Houston, where all the hype that still exists today was created. He'll know how to handle KJ Jefferson and develop him well. I imagine a bunch of 1 and 2 read pass plays to keep it nice and simple for him. And Calzada just needs to channel his inner A.J. McCarron, man. That's all he needs to do. He just needs to manage that game and hand the ball to Isaiah Spiller and just get out of there with a W.
Yeah, just get the ball to A-Chain. Let that kid run. Get the kid the ball in space. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be a 40-yard bomb. Just get the ball to A-Chain and let Spiller run downhill too. He'll be okay.
So that's the game of the week. Let's move on to the rest of the games on the slate. Did I interrupt you, Hammer? I'm sorry.
You're fine. I was just going to say I'm looking forward to the sort of defensive coordinator chess match. We know Barry Odom is going to throw some interesting stuff at Calzada, especially with him being inexperienced. And and I would expect Elko to do the same. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how these teams come out. Arkansas likes to, they like to basically make you earn your points in a sense where they do a lot of zone coverage. They like to rush 3 or 4 and drop everybody else. And we saw what that did to a team like Ole Miss last year, who really likes to take shots downfield. A&M doesn't like to take shots downfield. If you're going to give them, the run game, they will. So, like I said, I'm interested to see how that works because A&M and Jimbo are perfectly happy to take 4 and 6 yards at a time and run and take 10 or 11 play drives, which is sort of exactly what Arkansas wants you to do. They're just banking on you making some mistakes or not being able to put those drives together. So I'm excited to see it. I do think A&M will pull it out, but it'll be very close.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go up to Chestnut Hills in Boston, Massachusetts for the Missouri Tigers and the Boston College Eagles. Missouri's a 2-point favorite. TV, ESPN2. That is an 11 o'clock kick on Saturday. I don't know too much about Boston College. I know they're undefeated. Missouri's probably favored to win the game for a reason. They haven't overly impressed either.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I kind of was looking into this game too, looking at Boston College because you never know with Boston College, right? It's like, every 6-7 years they pop up and hey, they have a good team this year. And then they go back, underground and dormant for another 5-6 years. So, I didn't really know much about them. I kind of looked into the ACC, preseason rankings and such. And some of them had them right up there kind of with Clemson and NC State on that side of the conference. So, Boston College has looked decent. They're averaging about 400 yards a game on offense. They've got a balanced offense as well. They're passing for about 200 and rushing for about 200. They haven't been challenged too much yet. They played Temple last week and had a pretty good win there. So, this is kind of really their first test. Mizzou has been tested a little bit, played Kentucky, right? Lost to Kentucky in that great game. I'm interested to see. I'm really excited to watch this one, to be honest with you. I love games up there in Boston College. They're fun to watch. It gets cold up there. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I think I actually think I like Boston College in this game. I think Mizzou. I think it's going to be close. The spread has it at 2, as you said. So I think it's going to be a really close game. Mizzou traveling to a cold weather. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. It's still early season. We'll see. But I just think it's going to be a game that Boston College can pull out. I think their coach is doing a good job there. He's recruiting well at Boston College, for Boston College standards. So, usually I pick the SEC. I'm an SEC homer, but I think in this one, Boston College takes it.
I'll take the opposite approach. I think Mizzou will win this one. The only thing that worries me is that it's an 11 a.m. Kick. So it's just one of those games where you're going to have to be up and ready, because if you're a little bit sleepy going on the road to a place you've never been before, and it's an early kick, we've seen time and time again, name the school where they just get out to a slow start, which can happen for Mizzou. But what little I know about Boston College, I believe their starting quarterback is injured, Phil Jurkovec. I think he went down week 1 or week 2. So I have no idea what their backup situation is like, but given that situation, I think Mizzou has been tested. They were tested on the road. The Kentucky atmosphere, I'm sure, will be much louder, and there was a lot more going on. We'll be at an 11 a.m. kick in Massachusetts at Boston College. So I think Bazelak will take care of the football, and they're going to keep feeding Beatty in both the running game and the passing attack. He's sort of their do-it-all guy right now, and he's putting up pretty darn good numbers. So I think Mizzou's a little bit more talented. It'll be a close game. I mean, I think that the 2 point spread is very accurate, but I think Mizzou goes in there and wins a pretty close game. But I'd be surprised if they lost.
And just one thing, I just looked it up. So it's not going to be a cold weather game. It's going to be in the mid 70s. However, it looks like it could be 3 possible days of rain from Thursday until Saturday. So don't exactly know what the percentages on that are, but that could change the dynamic a little bit if it's been, just going to be a sloppy, nasty game. We'll see.
Yeah, I think they're pulling a rug up there anyway. Let's go to the best team in the SEC and the worst team in the SEC. The Georgia Bulldogs playing the Vanderbilt Commodores. Georgia's the 35.5-point favorite. It's on the SEC network at 11 a.m. Saturday. And you just have to look at this game and say, okay, Georgia's 35.5. How many points do you think Vandy can score? And then you might get to 10. And can they score 46, Georgia? Yeah, they can.
Yeah. I know this hurts you as the president of the Ken Seals fan club, but he struggled last week, so he's been real streaky so far to start the season.
Yes, down, up, down.
Yeah. In his defense, I don't think he has a ton of help out there as far as skill position or offensive line goes. But to me, that's the biggest mismatch there is just that Georgia defensive front against Vanderbilt's offensive line and a young, mistake-prone quarterback, at least from what we've seen so far this year from Ken Seals. So
after this weekend,
this one will probably be over pretty quick.
Yeah, after this weekend, he'll be able to file an OSHA complaint for his offensive line not providing a safe workplace for him. So, yeah. I think it could be pretty bad.
Yeah, that's one way to make money through NIL is file a workplace complaint.
So, like you said, this should be over quick. Georgia's defense will swallow them up. Offensively, they could hand it off 50 times if they wanted and score enough to win. So that spread's probably pretty accurate. I would not put any money on the Commodores in that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to waste too much breath on this one to save us all some time. But I think Georgia's going to crush them. It's going to be, like Hank said, it's going to be over quickly. I think it's going to be good for Georgia, right, to get more reps for their offense. Their offense finally did look like they got it going. I mean, Stetson Bennett had a great game, the week before, but JT Daniels needed to be in there. And the more reps that offense can get with JT Daniels and those ones in there as they move into the heart of SEC play, the better. So it's just going to be good for them, week to get on track and move on after, whooping Vandy.
Yeah, and everybody needs to pay attention to Brock Bowers, the true freshman. He's pretty legit at the tight end position for Georgia. Low-key game of the weekend. I mean, Arkansas and A&M is obviously the game of the week, but LSU and Mississippi State, that has a potential to be so much fun. Mississippi State is really good on defense. LSU does not have a running game, so they're a one-dimensional, powerful offense with some of the most talented players in the league. And Mississippi State's a 2.5-point home underdog. TV's on ESPN. It's on at 11 a.m. in the morning. If LSU has not learned in 2 weeks how to stop a shallow crossing route, Mike Leach might score and score and score and score on those guys.
Yeah, it could happen. I think this is going to be a fun game. I can't wait for it because Coach O, right, has had this one circled since last year, since the second game of last year. He knew they were coming up next year. And, he was coming to Starkville thinking, hey, I'm going to beat these guys in the sissy maroon shirts. So I can't wait. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I expect a high-scoring game. Mississippi State, they've got a great run defense right now, and so I expect them to try to completely neutralize that. LSU doesn't have a great run game, so they're just going to sit back there and try to make Max Johnson beat them. And I think LSU last week, they found a little bit of offense. And so I don't think LSU's offense is going to be, scoring 21 in this game. I expect them to be in the 30s. Mississippi State's defense is not all that great, even though they have a decent run defense. And then on the other side, right, I think that Mike Leach can score. Like you said, the shallow crossing routes, they may just do, I think Hank said it in our recaps, just like death by a thousand shallow crossing routes. So that could well happen again on Saturday. I think it's kind of a toss-up, to be honest with you, but I think I'm going to take LSU in this one. I think they've righted the ship a little bit more. I think Coach O's got him on the right track. Max Johnson, looked a little bit better last week, but LSU by a hair. I think it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the Tigers here. I think they, based on what I saw last week, as y'all both pointed out, they don't have a run game, but Max Johnson looks very good. Um, and if they can just give him a little bit of time, I expect him to be able to make things happen, get the ball on the outside to Boutte and those playmakers, and pull out a win. I think, you know, I was looking back at the stat line of Mississippi State against Memphis, and their offense right now is, you know, it's just death by 1,000 shallow cross routes.
Mm-hmm.
Will Rogers, he played pretty well in that game, and they just couldn't really string together enough drives, and they don't have any real big play ability. It's very much, you know, 5 to 10 yard passes and try to march down the field that way, which is just really hard to do. No matter how good your quarterback is or how in rhythm he is with his wideouts, that's hard to do and sustain drives down the field. So until Mississippi State can really get a downfield threat and start getting some chunk plays, um, I just think it's going to be hard for them to put up more than 28 points, let's say, which I think in this game they'll probably need to win. They'll probably need to put up more than that. So I'm taking LSU. I think like Alex pointed out, Coach O's had this one circled. So if they were going to come out ready to play in any game this entire year, it's going to be this one. So I think they'll win, but I do think it'll be close. Mississippi State's not a pushover. And LSU looked good last week, but it was a Central Michigan team who's a average Group of 5 team, right? So both teams with a ton to play for, they should both be up for the game. But I just think LSU's got a little bit too much firepower for Mississippi State.
Yeah, one thing in the hope department for Mississippi State, the offense has looked very drab all year, very drab, until they were down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Then the offense wakes up and they either come back and win the game or they were stopped a yard short against Memphis of getting in. So they're flashing to get there. They're not exactly there. Whenever that offense becomes the first quarter offense, they'll have something.
Definitely.
Yep.
I think you're right about that.
Auburn is playing Georgia State. We're not going to focus on that. They're 27-point favorite. They handled the whiteout pretty well in Happy Valley, and they had a good football team. But why put the ball in Bo Nix's hands at the end when you got Tank Bigsby behind you? That I don't know that. I can't figure that out. But let's Tennessee and Florida. We'll go flashback to the 90s. Peyton Manning at quarterback, Steve Spurrier and Danny Werfel on the other side, throwing the ball up and wait, no, that's not happening. Florida has no passing game, and Tennessee is a C- version of Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's we'll see. I mean, the thing to me in this game, I think Florida showed us what they have last week, right? Like, they can't really throw the ball right now, but it kind of doesn't matter. They can manhandle you in the trenches, and they're a good football team who can hang with anybody. I just don't think Tennessee is good. It has the talent right now, right, to hang with a Florida. One thing I am interested to watch, and you guys may have heard this, I haven't yet. I know Joe Milton was hurt right last week, and Hendon Hooker came in and played well. It kind of goes back to Florida. I think this is kind of going to be a question all year, right? Is Anthony Richardson going to walk out as the starter this week, or is Emory Jones going to walk out as the starter this week? And same thing on the other side. Is Hendon Hooker now the guy, and that's who we're rolling with, or is Joe Milton, once he comes back from injury, is he going to be the guy at Tennessee? Or even, do they both not play anymore, and does Harrison Bailey finally get a shot? We'll see. But to me, that's kind of the big things. The main thing with these two teams is what's going on at quarterback. I think we'll see, if Anthony Richardson is healthy, I expect to see him again against Tennessee. His stats through the first few games, you just can't keep that kid off the field if he's healthy. So he just provides that spark, right? So I'm interested to look at that in this game. I think Florida does roll. I think it's probably Florida by, 2 touchdowns or more. But I will be watching this game just to kind of keep an eye on the two quarterback situations for Florida and Tennessee.
Yeah, I think we talked plenty on here about maybe a look ahead or maybe a letdown situation. Obviously, this is a potential letdown for Florida after a very, very tough loss last week. But Tennessee, they're just not the team that has enough to beat them. And especially based on what we saw from Florida last week, the way they play. I mean, we talk a lot about two things that sort of can travel or carry you even when maybe you're not on your A game is defense and a run game. Well, Florida's defense looked pretty darn good last week. Tennessee doesn't have near the quarterback or skill position that Bama does. And Florida's running game should just help them control the clock. It matches up, if you can get stops, if Florida's defense can get stops, it matches up perfectly because that super fast style that Heupel runs will just end up leaving his defense out there to dry if they can't get first downs. Because if they're going 3 and out early on in the game, Florida's going to be up time of possession. They're going to be doubling them in the first half. And if they're able to run the ball, which I think they will be, then Tennessee's just going to get worn down, and they're not going to have enough. Not going to have enough to keep up. So I definitely think Florida will pull this one out. And I'm excited. Yeah, hopefully Richardson does come back. I think that game against Alabama is different. If he is, namely that 2-point conversion play, he's probably out there if he doesn't have a tweaked hammy. So, based on how Emory Jones played in that game, even though it wasn't spectacular through the air, he was making plays. He's clearly a leader. So I think he'll continue to be the starter, but you have to get Richardson on the field. He's going to have packages to play. So I think, Florida should pull this one out pretty easy by a couple touchdowns. Tennessee's just, they're not there yet.
Yeah, one thing to keep an eye on, if Florida can't get first downs early and they have another disaster first quarter, this is an offense that can put a basketball-type run together and all of a sudden you're down 21 points. So if Tennessee does that, it could become a different ball game and very interesting at the end. Anthony Richardson, I told y'all last week my theory on what was going on. I think the quarterback competition starts this week, and he ends up being the starting quarterback by the Georgia game. Heck of an athlete, and you can see that. But one question I do have, and we talked about this at the beginning, what if Alabama just isn't very good? We all think they're very good, and they're very talented, extremely talented. But that didn't look like a good football team last weekend.
Yeah, I trust Nick Saban.
Yeah, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. They deserve all the rope they can get because they've earned it. But
exactly,
yeah, if against Southern Mississippi, we're going to get to that game in a little bit because we're going to talk about that. Now, I'm not worried about them covering that line, but if they lay another egg after laying a little bit of egg against Mercer, that's 3 games in a row, and that's something we haven't seen from an Alabama coach team. Let's move on to the Kentucky Wildcats against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Game is in Columbia. Kentucky's a 5-point favorite. It's on ESPN2 at 6 o'clock at night. Kentucky supposedly found a passing game in week 1. It has gone dormant. Will Levis is, like I said, I don't know if he's Kenny Drill, but he might be Kenny Trill. And Kentucky's stat lines the past 2 weeks have looked a whole lot like last year. So much so they brought Eddie Grand back. So what do you guys think?
I think this is going to be a good game. The atmosphere in Williams-Brice, especially for a night game, should be very good. That fan base, I'll give them credit. They're loyal. They show up for the Gamecocks, even though things have not been very bright the last few years, but they show up. So I think that'll be, a great atmosphere, and it'll be interesting to see what Kentucky can do on the road. I don't think they've played a road game yet, as far as I know. So we'll see what they've got. The thing they're going to need to lean on, I imagine, is Chris Rodriguez, just because that's what they did against Mizzou, right? When they matched up with a team physically that was on their level for the most part. They sort of, like you said, went back to their old style of hand the ball off a bunch, Now, they did take deep shots, which was different than Kentucky in the past. Even though Levis didn't throw it, didn't have that many attempts, they were still trying to push the ball downfield when he did. Um, I think I see this game being a pretty close, like I said, and maybe a little bit sloppy just because I don't know what to expect from Kentucky on the road. So I could definitely see them turning the ball over. I just don't think South Carolina really has the horses. I think Kentucky probably wins by a field goal, maybe a touchdown in the end, just because I trust Chris Rodriguez. I think Wandale Robinson is still a difference maker if they can get him the ball on the outside. And then as far as South Carolina is concerned, they don't have a ton. And granted, last week going against Georgia, that's a total mismatch. This game will be different. But I think Kentucky's the better team, and I think last week was obviously just a complete dud. So if you're a Kentucky fan, every team has them. You just got to look past it, move on. I think they'll be more prepared and ready for this game, as they look to go 2-0 in SEC play.
Yeah, I expect Kentucky to bounce back this week. I think that they just had a down week last week. They were coming off a big emotional win, and it's just it's human nature, right? There is almost nobody in college football who doesn't have at least one of those every year, except for Alabama, seemingly, except this year, right? So I think it was just one of those down games for them last week. I expect them to get back on track. Like Hammer said, SC to me just doesn't have much, right? That cupboard is so bare. We saw it last week. We've been saying it since the preseason. It's a multi-year rebuild. It's going to take time for Shane Beamer to get it right out there. And you just saw that look on his face, that one that was going around Twitter of him just looking like, I can't believe I made this decision to come to South Carolina. And I think it's going to be like that all year, unfortunately. And I don't think that changes this week. I think, like I said, Kentucky, I think they get back on track. I think they rely on what they know, run it down South Carolina's throat and make a few plays with Wandale Robinson on the outside. My expectation is that Kentucky wins by 10 or more in a bounce back week for them, to keep going in SEC play and keep them in the thick of the race in the East.
Yeah, this is one of those games that could end up like 17-0 or 21-3, something like that. Just Kentucky easily covers the game. South Carolina's never in it, but South Carolina's sneaky good defensively whenever you're not playing an elite team. Southern Mississippi in Tuscaloosa to play number 1 Alabama. Alabama's a 45-point favorite. That's too many points. On the SEC network at 6:30. I mean, Alabama scored 48 against Mercer and 40. Yeah, Southern Miss is better than Mercer. They would beat Mercer, and that's far too many points. And the over/under on it is 58. So that's like I don't know. It's one of those games where if Alabama comes out sluggish, we're looking at 3 straight games that is less than their standard, less than what we're used to. Nick Saban is yelling at these guys. Is it going to finally reach the point where the message falls on deaf ears? I mean, Pete Golding and defensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien and offensive coordinator. It's just different. Everybody inside that program is different. You had to replace first rounders all over the place. They're human. They're people. They're going to not be perfect replacing those coaches every now and then. There's going to be a time that you have to build, and you have I think he's a sophomore quarterback, but he's a freshman. He's essentially a freshman because he didn't play that much last year. I mean, he's uber talented. There's 4 and 5 stars all over the field. Nick Saban's still Nick Saban, and all of this could be for nothing, but right now, this just does not look like the Alabama that we know and love. Certainly not the number 1 team in the country.
With that, give me Alabama to cover.
Right.
I think Saban is going to be riding them all week. I think this team is uber talented. And I don't know a ton about Southern Miss, but I don't think it matters, right? This is a team that is far inferior to Alabama. And I just think that this week they're going to run them over like a freight train. And I don't think Nick Saban's going to let off the gas because he is sick and tired of watching his team, do 31-29 against Florida, right? Or just kind of get a big win over Mercer, but it doesn't really look that good. No style points, I think Nick Saban is really gonna step on the gas this week. I expect Alabama to put up some big numbers and make it really ugly early and not really let up. So I think Bama in a big one this week. I think they get back on track, and everybody's now talking about next week, right? When we talk about this again, saying, "Oh, is Alabama back?" Like maybe they are the number one team in the country. That's what I expect this weekend.
But at least we could have that conversation now, and it's not just assumed that it's like, "Oh yeah, they're number one." There's no doubt. At least they look human now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I think, as far as this game is concerned, Southern Miss obviously is outmatched. And, Saban will have these guys as ready to play and as hyped up as you can be for a game against Southern Miss. I think, he's going to just be on them so hard to make sure that they come out and play well. And more importantly, play physically. They are going to need to find a running game. So I think they'll try and hit on that, and they're going to need to stop the run. Their linebacker play last week was pretty bad. So I don't know if that means they need to put new guys in there, and 2020 needs to watch some film and sit on the bench for a week or what. But this game specifically, I think Bama will just destroy Southern Miss. It's a bad week to match up with Alabama after they, nearly lost. And then moving forward, or just talking more about Alabama in general, I think it's something that I expected before the season was for them to take a step back. But it's all relative, right? I mean, they're taking a step back from going undefeated, beating everybody by double digits for the most part. I mean, that was one of the best teams and seasons we've ever seen. So it's insane for them not to take a step back. That doesn't mean that they're not a top 5 team in the country and probably still favored to win the West for sure. Obviously, Georgia's a different animal, but of course, what I've seen so far, I still think Alabama, is probably rightly favored to win the West. So it'll be very interesting to see just how they develop. Can they get back to that point? Because, like you said, you lose so many first-round picks. It's one thing to replace, a first-round pick like Najee Harris or Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith, the stinking Heisman winner, with a 5-star recruit. But a 5-star recruit doesn't automatically translate to a first-round pick. So, especially in the first couple of weeks, I think it's natural for them to be a little bit sluggish or just not as good as they were last year. So this game will be a blowout, and we'll really see what they're made of against Ole Miss, because the Rebels look great. We know Lane Kiffin will be ready, and it's just a different style of game too than what Florida did. So we saw Alabama get bullied physically. Well, now they're going to go up against an elite quarterback in a couple of weeks, and can they handle that? Can their defense hold? So it'll be interesting to see. I think, as we said earlier, Nick Saban is Nick Saban. So, them taking a step back might be going 11-1, but they're definitely gettable. Someone could get them.
Yeah, and I think we will know a lot more about Alabama 3 weeks from now. Because after Ole Miss, after Texas A&M, if they come out of this stretch, that Florida game, they beat USM, beat Ole Miss, beat Texas A&M, all will be well, all will be fine, and Alabama will be ready to just cruise at that point. But if they struggle at some point, if they drop a game, if they drop 2 games, it could be problematic. I mean, it's a different conversation that we're having 3 weeks from now.
Well, we know what those fans are like in Alabama. If Nick Saban loses 2 games this year, they ought to just fire that guy.
Yeah, seriously. It's ridiculous that we're having this conversation, but
It is.
it really
I
is.
always love listening to those radio shows in Alabama, when they are struggling a little bit, even if they only won by 10. I mean, I'm sure that the radio shows this week were just popping off with people calling, well, I don't know, this defense doesn't look that good, and maybe Nick Saban's losing it. There's always a few callers like that.
The Monday after Ole Miss beat Alabama in 2014, the phones were not working on the Feinbaum show that day.
Probably smart.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hey, before we get out of here, what are something you guys are looking forward to this weekend? What do you want to see?
Well, there's a lot I want to see. Mainly, it's what we talked about. I'm excited for this Arkansas A&M game. I think it's going to be interesting. It's really interesting, finally, right? Because Arkansas is good. Arkansas is being respected. They're number 16 in the country. People are taking notice of what Sam Pittman's doing out there, and that's the first time it's been like that in a long time. The games have always been close between the two, right, for the most part, except for maybe 2 years in that 9-year stretch where A&M has won. But I think it's going to be a dogfight, and I'm just really looking forward to that 2:30 CBS matchup.
Yeah, to take it a different direction, I was thinking about maybe taking it outside the SEC, but there's not a ton of good matchups. I know game day is going to a Wisconsin Notre Dame game, and I'm not too sold on either one of those teams right now. So that might be a good game. I'm sure I'll watch it, but I'm not too concerned about what that means, for the bigger landscape. I think that we hit on it earlier, obviously, but that LSU Mississippi State game is big. LSU, again, a good performance last week, but Coach O, don't get it twisted. He is still firmly on the hot seat. And if things do not go well in Starkville, it could turn ugly. We both picked LSU. I think they will get it right, but that's just something to keep an eye on. And then on the flip side, the way that Mississippi State lost last week was – and we don't have to get into what the refs did to them, but that was tough. Mississippi State fans, I'm sure, think they have a good chance in this game. So they're expecting it to be a good game. And if for whatever reason it gets out of hand, then they're probably going to be looking at Leach a little bit sideways as well. Like, all right, what are we doing here? We just lost to Memphis, and then a subpar, frankly, LSU team at this point comes in here and beats us. So it'll just be interesting to see how that game plays out, because I think the ramifications could be pretty big depending on, what ends up happening.
Yeah. And also in that Mississippi State Memphis game, if basic fundamental football happens where even Pop Warner kids know to pick that football up, there's nothing for the officials to screw up. There's no need for duplicate numbers. There's no need for plays dead. The ball is just dead. The fact that he made that mistake, let those mistakes happen. So I have little sympathy for that run back, because just touching the ball and walking away, smart play by that kid from Memphis. I mean, it was a smart play for him indeed. I'm looking forward to the LSU Mississippi State game. I want to see if LSU figured out how to deal with the shallow crossing route. They haven't since Mike Leach burnt them the first game last season. UCLA got them basically over and over and over again. I want to see what that looks like. I want to see what this KJ Jefferson offense can do against that defense from A&M. Because selfishly, looking at this game, Arkansas on offense is like a B-plus version of Ole Miss. So if A&M does really well against Arkansas, that'll forecast the way the Ole Miss game is going to go. So that's what I'm going to watch there. Auburn, they must have like 37 non-conference games a year. Every time you look up, they're playing for somebody out the league. And Missouri and Boston College, I didn't even know it was happening until today. So, so it is one of those things. I'm looking forward to everything. I'm going to enjoy the bye week with Ole Miss being off. But I'm going to watch the Tennessee-Florida game for old time's sake, but I'm definitely going to tune in for that A&M Arkansas game. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
It's going to be a battle. It's going to be an old Southwest Classic battle, so we're excited for that one, no doubt.
Yeah, and Arkansas has a chance to go 3-0 in the Southwest Conference, and you can't sleep on that.
You can't, and they want it. I
Uh,
can tell you, I've got some Arkansas buddies, and they're telling me we want the sweep.
yeah, it's one of those things, especially with Texas and OU coming into the conference. By the way, before I get out of here, I do want to say this: the schedule getting surprise release tonight for 2022 is entirely so the SEC can say we weren't planning on Texas and OU coming in 2022. We already had our schedule out. It's entirely that.
That's so true, and it's so funny you say that because you kind of like think back, and this just hit me. You think back to when we were talking about this, right? When it broke right before the season that Texas and OU are coming, when it broke at SEC Media Days, and yeah, everybody you asked was like, "Well, what would the scheduling look like? You know, what are we going to do with with the sides of the conference? Are we going to do pods? What are we going to do?" They knew the whole thing. People were asking, sources inside the SEC offices like, do you guys know what the schedule is going to look like? And they were all telling the media, no, we have no idea. We don't know. They knew it. They had all of it ready to go. This stuff was done months ago.
Yeah, my guess is that the schedule that was released today, none of those games get played because
Really?
they're going to have to redo the schedule when Texas and OU come into the conference.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And come May, it's going to say, oh, they're going to come in July. So we have to scramble to get it done.
Yeah.
And then, and they probably already have the schedule worked
Well,
out.
I was
together
seeing
at the same
something. I saw a game between. Maybe I was watching SEC Network. Maybe I was missing something. But they were saying that Texas was going to play somebody. I think Texas Alabama in 2022.
Yeah.
Is that already scheduled?
That was already scheduled. That was supposed to be a
Okay.
non-conference game. It's in Austin, in Darrell K. Royal. Bevo, the whole 9 yards. It'll be a nice little welcome to the league moment for a team that just got boat raced by Arkansas.
Yeah, that's going to be really hard for Horns fans too. When Nick Saban, who they thought they were going to get, right before they got Tom Herman, comes into DKR and stomps them.
They would have gotten Nick Saban. That would have happened if they could have kept their mouth shut.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah. I read that. That was they had him basically, and then he got tired of the rumors and basically board of regents and donors not being able to keep their mouth shut. And he said, "All right, I'm done with this."
It's amazing how much that school has a problem with somebody needing to let you know that they have information. Here, this is what I heard. And it is so crazy. They got so many donors and so many boosters, and it's just a problem. That's the reason I'm so surprised that the SEC move just was kept quiet for so long until it was basically ready to happen.
Yeah. And how did the info come out? Board of Regents from Texas. That was the source.
Well, SEC Media Days was the Texas A&M beat writer.
Well, no, I know it was Brent Zwerneman, but it came from a Texas regent who he had a relationship with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they wanted to upstage. Jimbo and A&M, catch them off guard at media days, and it worked.
Yeah, they got
that part of it worked.
My goodness, that turned into an absolute zoo. That was a fun day. That whole week, I did a blowout on my show that included graphics and everything about Texas and Oklahoma. That was a good bit of fun. By the way, I heard a little bit of rumors that in the American, they're looking at Colorado State and Air Force to replace them going to the Big 12.
Well,
good for them.
Sure, good for you. I mean, we previewed Colorado State a little bit earlier with Andy. Yeah, they're not too good, but hey, if you want them, take them.
Yeah, it works. But Colorado State and Air Force are both from Colorado.
Yeah.
So I figured they're going to get 4 teams, but where are the other 2 going to come from? Well, anyway, thank you guys for coming by doing the preview this week. This, of course, will be available on Friday at 6 and on demand thereafter. And they'll come by next week, and we'll do Week 5 and talk a little Bama, Ole Miss, and Georgia, Arkansas, because next week could be fun. Absolutely fun. I think Kentucky and Florida is that weekend too. So for the Hammer, for Boss Man Slim, thank you very much for watching us. Tune in next week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Stephen.